our country. A lot of federal elected officials in Congress are trying to get their party's candidates elected into office to be able to regain control of the respective chamber of Congress, whether it be the House, whether it be the Senate. And a lot of these candidates are running on issues, and unfortunately, they are misinforming the public as to what the issues really are. And that's my purpose of sitting down here tonight. I wanted to go through a couple of these issues and basically let you know what's going on, what you need, what I think we as voters should look at with respect to these issues in the election. For example, number one, immigration. The issue that is more preponderant or more visible today is the fact that our borders are inundated or overwhelmed with a massive influx of individuals, immigrants that are coming into the country seeking asylum. The argument that a lot of the candidates that are running for office this election is that this was the responsibility of the president and his administration. Now, that statement in itself is incorrect. If we were to sit down and review our laws for our country, the Constitution, laws passed by Congress, you will see that Congress is solely responsible for passing the bills that become into law. These bills, once they are passed, are sent to the president for him to sign into law. With immigration, number one, our immigration system is outdated. It has been outdated for several decades. Had Congress acted back then and addressed the situation in updating our immigration system to be able to handle a higher capacity of entry of immigrants, we wouldn't be in the situation that we are in today. And for these political candidates, both on the federal level, the state level, and local, to say that it is the president's fault or responsibility, they are saying this, unfortunately, incorrectly. Congress has been responsible for it, and I believe that as responsible voters, we need to look at the candidates that are running for the offices in Congress and ask ourselves: is the individual that we are voting for, are they willing to sit down with their colleagues on both sides of the aisle to address the issues with immigration and get this situation fixed once and for all? Now, you may say, well, what is the solution to the immigration problem? The first step is updating our immigration system. Now, what happens after that may involve a series of movements or details that a lot of us may not like. But we have to understand that we were brought to this point or this juncture in time because of the negligence of our U.S. Congress, that they have failed to act over decades, really, of time. Now, you may say, well, it is the president's responsibility. It technically isn't. And history will prove what is being said right now, then it is Congress's responsibility. Obama tried to adopt an executive order into law for some immigration issues. What happened? It got sued and blocked. President Trump tried to do the same thing on the opposite end with some executive orders, and those were blocked by the courts. Biden, it's the same thing. And the underlying issue the underlying argument that the judges made in their ruling was that because the president does not have the authority to pass or to change immigration law. It's been said, it's been defined by the courts. So for us to blame the executive branch is not correct. It's not the right assumption to make. So we need to elect officials into Congress that will address the situation. It may not be exactly what we want it to be addressed, but it will nonetheless take the steps to get to where it needs to be so that these issues that we're having now are taken care of. That's immigration. Another example is abortion. Abortion has been a hot issue, and I try not to get into it because I don't want to label myself as pro or con. At one time, I was very conservative about it, but there has been a lot of things that have happened that have made me step back and think, and made me approach it with a different point of view, with an open point of view, basically. And that is because, number one, as y'all know, the Supreme Court overturned Roe versus Wade. A lot of states have passed abortion laws that brought it to this point, and these abortion laws have been, to be honest, severely restricted. I have seen in the news numbers of cases, and I read about them, where women have had these issues with their pregnancies and have been forced to terminate the pregnancy, not because they choose to, but because the pregnancy is not viable, and because the current abortion laws that are on the books now in some of these states, they do not allow for that. And I think that whoever passed these laws or wrote these laws did not take these specific type of instances into effect. I'm not saying that to terminate pregnancy for that reason is good or bad. I believe that the decision that has to be made in this case should be made by a qualified medical professional. Number one, and number two, the patient or the woman who is experiencing the issue should have a say in that respect, because these specific issues, these specific circumstances are unique issues in the sense that it is something that, unfortunately, God forbid, we don't want to wish it on any specific woman or specific person, but there has to be some sort of contingencies for things like this. I mean, you may say, well, abortion is not the answer. Well, and I ask you, is there another answer or another solution for this issue? Because in some of these instances that I'm talking about, it is not healthy or wise for the women to carry the pregnancy to term, because it can cause major health effects for the pregnant individual, the pregnant woman. So, in hindsight, some of these laws that were passed were not thought out correct. Not thought out entirely. That's what I'm trying to say. And I think as responsible voters, we need to look at the law that we have on the books and truly look into these types of situations and see if these laws are being fair to that situation. That even though they may not be what we we want it to be, but we have to be wise, and we have to be mindful that there are these type of contingencies, and there has to be, to a certain extent, an exception to the rule to accommodate these type of things. I mean, I'm not a proponent of saying, okay, because the person was raped, they should have an abortion. That's not what I'm getting at. I'm not addressing that issue specifically, because that's a horse of a whole different color, if I can use that terminology. I'm talking about specific issues health-wise that merit that type of a decision to make, and the fact that the laws are so restricted that they were not those particular instances were not carefully thought of in the process of making these laws. That's just another example, okay, basically, of what's going on. And then the economy, you've got one side of the aisle blaming the president for the economy, the other side saying different. The economy, there's not much I can say about, because it's in a state of flux right now. We're in the period of inflation. and maybe a recession, but I don't think that as far as the economy, I don't think that should be a complete reason to make a decision to vote for an individual. Um, Also, there is, I mean, another thing also we have to consider is that both these parties have been aggressively fighting each other, and we need to determine these specific candidates that are running. Are they worthy? Are they um, do they deserve to be in that office? Um, I don't know. Another issue is these mass shootings that have been occurring frequently. We've had mass shooting after mass shooting. We had the mass shooting in this is over the course of the last 2, 3 years, 4 years. We've had the mass shootings in New York. We've had mass shootings in El Paso, Texas, Santa Fe, Texas, Santa Fe High School. Most recent one right now is Uvalde, Texas, Robb Elementary. I mean, we've had a number of mass shootings, and the the method and motive has always been the same. A young man walking in with a automatic rifle like a AR-15, you know, AR-17 or whatever, going in and you know creating carnage. You know, most elected officials are saying, well, on one side of the aisle are saying, well, we need to pass laws to protect our schools, and they focus on one specific venue. The problem with that is that mass shootings have not occurred in just one venue. We've had mass shootings in supermarkets. We've had mass shootings in department stores like Walmart in El Paso. We've had shootings in places of worship. Sutherland Springs in Texas, the Jewish church in New York. We've had mass shootings in nightclubs in Florida. We've had a mass shooting in a concert in Las Vegas. There is not just one specific venue that mass shooters have used. It's multiple venues have been used, and these elected officials are saying, well, we need to step up and protect our schools. I would ask these elected candidates, for the elected office, I would ask them this question, and I probably would ask this question to all congressmen. What about the venues that are not schools? I mean, I don't think anything has been mentioned with these other venues, at least that I have seen or I can remember. Basically, you have one party promoting that. The other side of the aisle is saying, okay, well, we need to engage some form of gun control, or some form of preventing really these individuals from getting these high powered weapons and creating this mass carnage. The argument between the two sides of the aisle is there, but again, the argument that the conservatives are saying is that in fact the Second Amendment protects the right to bear arms. The problem is these elected officials and these elected candidates are only purporting one side of the argument. They're not giving you the complete information. They keep saying they keep referring to the Second Amendment, but they do not refer. Number one, they do not refer to the entire amendment. There's a phrase at the beginning of the amendment that says, "a well-regulated militia being essential." It talks about regulation. Now, I did a YouTube video not too long ago, or Twitter, live tweet not too long ago, and I said, okay, if we, and I went through some of the history of our country and to show that in fact regulation was part of the mentality that went into the Second Amendment. Unfortunately, the arguments that are presented in the courts do not take into consideration the entire Second Amendment. And that's why a lot of these cases that go to the courts are easily ruled, okay, it is a Second Amendment violation because the entire amendment is not being taken into consideration. I tell you, I ask you, as a responsible voter, do we want to put somebody in office that will consider the entire Second Amendment word for word, or do we want to put somebody in office that will only use a certain part of the Second Amendment to their benefit? Because that's what's happening. In a nutshell. And on top of that, a lot of these elected officials are being bought out by the NRA. Do we want to put an elected official into office that can be subtly bought out by a lobbyist organization such as the NRA? It's something to think about. I mean, I think about it, okay, and I'm not trying to badmouth the NRA. That's not my objective. My objective is to educate the voting community just a bit on the history of the issues, so that you yourself can make a better decision with respect to who you're going to put in office. Because I believe that, and I said this at the beginning, that this is a critical election and we need to be very responsible in who we put into the office that we're electing them into. It's very important that we don't, that we, I guess, to be more blunt, that we don't mess this up. We should not let partisan beliefs influence our decision as to who goes into office. I think the time for partisan beliefs needs to be set aside because there is too much division in partisanship. There is way too much. And I believe that if we're going to elect the correct individuals into office, we need to look at it in a nonpartisan manner. We need to set aside our political beliefs to be able to accomplish that important task. As I said, these are issues that I've wanted to bring up and I wanted to explain. I mean, there's a lot more, and I could be here for for a much longer period of time, going issue by issue and telling you exactly what the issue is, the history, how we got to it, and what needs to be addressed, what the misinformation is that these candidates are giving you. And I think that's the important thing, and that's why I reiterated over and over, is that we have to be mindful and be aware that these candidates are misinforming the voters with respect to these issues, because unfortunately they're trying to get their party into control when that should not be the objective. The objective is to get people into office that will make our country better. I mean, it may fall upon us to go outside of our political beliefs to do that, simply to get the country back on track. And that is what I'm trying to get across, is that we need to go beyond our political beliefs to get there. Then so be it. That's what needs to be done. Well, I don't want to bore you anymore with this, but like I said, I just wanted to make you aware and talk about it just a little bit. And I hope over these last 20 minutes that I was able to give you a little bit of insight as to what's going on, so that you make a much more informed decision at the polls when you go and cast your vote. Thank you. I will appreciate any comments you might want to leave on my Twitter feed or on my YouTube comments. By all means, do so. I'm open to hearing them, and I will most gladly respond and what I think about your comments in an objective manner. Well, thank you very much, and I hope you have a very, very good night.